Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob's Space Trucker and is part of a series. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 24. The capital of the Galactic Government Council was a planet chosen especially for the purpose. It was what humans might call a Gaia-class world. The gravity was heavier than anyone on the Council liked, but that had been part of the point when they founded the Council here. They had fitted massive gravity generators across the planet within deep craters that dot the continents, making for perfectly contained pole cities. Each of the major Council species had a creature dedicated to their own environment and tailored to their tastes. The less powerful species would share various craters with similar species. The largest of the craters housed the Council itself in the Capitol building. It was a massive spire stretching high enough to look over the edge of the crater and at the lush green terrain beyond. Despite having settled centuries ago, no species expanded past these craters. It was easier to control the gravity within the crater, and it was part of their statement about the planet itself. Leave most of it intact and just use portions of it tailored to the needs of each race. Of course, some joked that these visual paradises hit a bureaucratic hellhole, since there were so many different species that were members of the Council. But it was tailored around the founding members. There were some species who couldn't stay awake through the Council meetings, and many who weren't comfortable in the settings. This was how the galactic government generally worked. They preached cooperation and unity, but at the same time only catered to the tastes of the most powerful species. Each of those craters had been fought for on a paperwork war, meetings after meetings, constant committees about every last little detail. The solar cycle of the planet itself was irrelevant. There were meetings and ceremonies and appointments at all times. To help combat their own time cycles, most species would hire specifically trained diplomats from species who would better endure the time changes and varied climates. There were never-ending paperwork, assigned studies, and training going on to try and keep species in the proper standing with the founding species. The Pulvians, with their love of rules and paperwork, made sure to keep it all as complicated and painful as possible. Then the Gulweldians, a species some humans might call space hamsters, were left to run many of the various offices and file paperwork. It wasn't that they were good at it. In fact, they were known for being nervous and prone to losing the files that had been submitted. Another layer had been added to make it as difficult as possible for anyone to get anything done. They were special Pulvian branches who were allowed to bypass the Goweldian departments to make sure the Council species had their paperwork all in order. One of the reasons the Goweldians were always so nervous was because they hadn't been alone on their home planet. There had been another species that was much stronger and meaner, but less intelligent. The official story was the Crusticans had saved the Goweldians from being killed by this other species, and in exchange the Goweldians were ever in their debt. In reality, the other species had been brutish, but more in harmless idiot sort of way, never taking out their anger on the smaller Goweldians. But the Crusticans had no use for them, and plenty of uses for the seemingly harmless slave race. They had been intent on achieving this goal when they'd been discovered by other species. They quickly changed their story and terrified the Goweldians into keeping up the charade. By this point, almost none of the Goweldians even knew the truth, but a very small group kept the true history alive, waiting for the right moment to make it known. The Goweldian ambassador was one of those, but he knew that now was not the time. He was in a special chamber deep beneath the main council building. It was where the council founders met for security meetings. He usually wasn't invited, but today he'd been dragged along to give the appearance of unity amongst the founders. He was seated on a plush, powerful-looking chair on a platform with the other founders, overlooking a mass of ambassadors from member species who'd been dragged out of bed or out of meetings to be here. Crustican honor guard surrounding them. We want to make it clear we expect a unanimous vote condemning the actions of these Libertonian and human terrorists, and a declaration of war against them. That was the Crustican matriarch Alet. She was older and larger than another of the Crustican matriarchs. She had been part of the force that wiped out the Goweldians' old neighboring species, all those centuries ago. He hadn't even known why they needed the honor guard to intimidate the others. She could kill everyone in this room on her own, eat it, and still be hungry. But we saw the Kristokhan ships advancing into human space before the attack on your colony. That was the Kityan ambassador, a third species of light omnivores near human space. They were new and didn't truly understand how the galactic government worked yet. The suppression devices hadn't been tailored for them yet, which was likely why she even dared speak back. We were moving forward because our intelligence made it clear that they were hostile. It has been explained to you in pathetic wretches before. This government is a democracy, and as a democracy, I demand a unanimous vote to show solidarity. She had reared up and stomped on the ground, shaking the chamber under her girth. There was fear on the faces of the ambassadors, and Puddle, the Geweldian ambassador, looked along the platform at the other species. The Pulvians and their smug superiority, the Greslins and their damn codes, the Phyllis and their stupid dancing, and of course the Kristokans. They had spoken to the greed of the other founders so long ago, stirring up hatred and jealousy towards the Libertonians who could fly, and were too tall and graceful and intelligent. Puddle cursed the ambassador from that age. They should have stood by the Libertonians. It would have been better to be wiped out as they fought than be slaves in all but name for centuries. These humans were his chance to have his revenge for all the wrongdoings done against his people. He just had to bide his time. Then he realized the other founders were looking at him.
Yes, of course. This is just like the time our saviors, the Kristokans, were able to liberate us from our old predators. We need to respect their judgment and abide by their call.
Once he said that, he could feel the sweat on his brow under his fur. But the other founders nodded and added their agreement. He quickly dabbed a cloth along his forehead and gulped. Damn his nerves. He watched the Kristokhan matriarch intimidate the other ambassadors for a moment. Soon he'd find a way to get his revenge on that horrible creature. All the crimes committed against his people would be paid back full. He'd be the one laughing at them. No more Puddle this and Puddle that. If only his people were good at something other than farming. They were terrible with paperwork, couldn't fight, and their engineers only made farming equipment. He paused then, as he looked out and saw all the ambassadors looking at him. Nervously, he looked to the side to see the other founders staring at him, and the matriarch scowling as she shouted, Puddle! He squealed and jumped, falling out of his chair and rolling around as he tried to get back on his feet. Useless little! The matriarch scowled even as the other founders laughed at the Galwaldian, desperately reaching up to grab the edge of his chair and pulled himself back up. No, please, Puddle, take your time, she hissed with annoyance. Stupid little rodent.
Sorry, so sorry, matriarch. I was thinking about food again. My error,
he huffed, trying to get his breath back. You fat little. Keep your mind on the matter at Claw. You never do anything right, she hissed. He had finally righted himself back up and sat in his chair. Never mind, Puddle, I'll make it clear myself. The matriarch looked back out at the other ambassadors as Puddle clutched his chest, feeling his heart thudding like mad. Beside condemning the humans and declaring war, I wanted a special directive naming my new most wanted enemy of the entire galactic government. She scowled out at the assembled ambassadors. There is no greater threat, no bigger enemy of all of us than a human known as Billy Bob, Space Trucker. I swear to George Washington Almighty, if any of you talk about my workout music ever again, I'll have you brought up in charges, Captain Crunch growled over the comm. Sorry, it was too good not to share, especially when I found out you like to move it, Billy Bob said as the archangels chuckled. As the other archangels echoed, move it. Not a word. I've worked very hard to be taken seriously as an officer. Being born with a last name Crunch isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world, you know. So why not change it? I refuse to let society force me to change. Suit yourself, Captain, Billy Bob said as he walked forward. He'd gotten the hang of the suit now, and they were walking along one of the roads leading to the cargo port. Most of the time they moved cargo around the surface on massive mag trains, but they still had roads for private vehicles. They'd walked down onto one of those roads, while Ivanovich piloted the Longhorn. The ship was set to hover and crept along nice and slow. Emily was in the back, ready to climb into the damaged but functional Libertonian power suit. should they need help. Crunch was in the cargo bay, out of sight as she spoke on the comm. They were taking a very leisurely stroll along the road, their black power suits arranged around the longhorn in a loose rectangle, Billy Bob up on the front left. Emily, do Gressler's wave? Yes. Would a Pulvian understand? Yes. He waved at the guard standing in the gatehouse as they walked closer, keeping a calm and casual pace. When they got closer, the guard in the bright orange vest and little cap stepped out. Billy Bob couldn't help but snicker a little at the sight, since he had his clothes cut so that the curly fur flopped out in various locations. Totally space poodles.
What is all of this?
We're here on a special assignment to search for the escaped terrorists who shot up the museum. We've been searching the wilderness for signs of them. Our government has taken this very seriously, which is why we're wearing brand new top-of-the-line suits, not the standard ones you see on regular police.
Oh,
the poodle said with a slow nod. Hey, no one called ahead of us, did they?
No, not that I know of.
Oh, that's good. I was worried. Why's that? Well, Billy Bob lowered his speaker volume and leaned in close. They've had us out in the forest for 2 whole solar cycles, just the 5 of us, and it's really creepy out there with just 5 people. All the trees and the strange sounds at night, and we have to take turns standing guard while the others sleep. So sometimes we're all alone in the dark. The Pulvian shuddered at the thought, as Billy Bob knew the idea would.
That's awful. 2 whole solar cycles?
Yeah, think about how many sleep cycles that is. That's the problem. They take this so seriously they won't let us come back right away. You know how it is. Your boss has some issue and he gets to stay home and rest like normal, but he makes you take extra work shifts, even though none of it is your fault, right?
Yeah, that's rough, the Pulvian said with a nod.
You know, you're not like the other fish cops, I know. You're normally so stiff and by the code. Oh, well, normally. But once you've been out in the forests at night, all alone, it changes you. Billy Bob watched the Pulvian shudder once more, and then waved them inside. Billy Bob smiled inside his suit as they walked forward, entering the cargo port. There was admin buildings near the center, and giant warehouses around the outside, with docking bays for the massive Atlas ships in between. He wasn't sure how big it was, but he couldn't see the other side from where they were. That was excellent, Billy Bob, Crunch said, having listened in. Now what? Billy Bob hummed as he looked around, and then started walking to the left. This way. He could see an Atlas that had a crew standing around the loading bay, sitting on crates, smoking something. A clear sign that they were done unloading and were waiting on something to show up. Didn't matter what species, Billy Bob knew what to look for in cargo crews. They had to walk another 10 minutes, even at a brisk pace, to get there, and it was one of the closer bays, so Billy Bob realized this place must be really huge. Either way, he stood up straighter than normal and set into a confident stride as he approached the Xeno sitting around on the crates. He'd seen plenty of them around before, called them lickers. They had 4 arms and more reptilian appearances, sort of like a really big iguana with extra limbs. They were about as tall as a human, but much lighter, obviously. The main reason he called them lickers was their super long tongue. They couldn't blink, so instead they'd lick their own eyes to moisten them. All right, you lot, clear out here. We're coming through, he barked out as he got close, and they jumped off their crates, looking at the approaching black power suits. Many of them nervously licked their eyeballs while they stubbed out the smoking sticks they'd been breathing in. And they weren't cigarettes, he realized as he got close. They literally looked like branches that had been partially set on fire. But what? One asked as Billy Bob turned and stepped up to him, abruptly towering over him. You heard me. Clear out. You got the notice half a cycle ago. I don't know why you're still here. We what? The licker looked confused and licked his eyes even more than usual in nervousness. How many times do I need to say it? Clear out. This ship is being commandeered in the name of the Galactic Council. You're interfering with Council business here. He set his hands on his hips. How bad do you want to go straight to space jail, huh? I hear there are plenty of interesting cellmates willing to explore interspecies physical relations. No. I just, there hasn't been, I didn't know. Well, you're in the way of official business, like I said, so clear out of here. The lickers scurried away as they guided the Longhorn up on the cargo ramp. The Atlas ship was so massive, the Longhorn fit into the center of the cargo bay, and had room for another 7 of them were they stacked properly. And that was just the cargo bay. Took a lot of fuel to move them around, and they had big crews. Part of the reason human freight had been so popular was their lower costs and ability to deliver smaller loads. As they set the Longhorn down in the bay, he saw a better-dressed command crew walking down the stairs at the front of the cargo bay. "What's the meaning of this?" the best-dressed licker asked as he approached. "I should ask you that," Billy Bob said and pointed at the creature. He stepped back in surprise. "We gave you notice half a cycle ago, and I find your crew outside smoking. They hadn't prepped the ship or removed their personal effects. Are you intending on obstructing our operations?"
What? I don't, we are,
His tongue was rubbing all over his eyeballs in anxiety. "I could have you written up right now. Do you want this short-term appropriation to turn into a total impound?"
I don't know what you're talking about.
"Oh, playing dumb, are you? We sent your comm officer a report half a cycle ago about commandeering the ship for a small jump around the planet and bringing it back before the solar cycle is over. It was time critical, and we were willing to compensate you. But turns out this is how you prep." The captain looked over to another licker who looked panicked and confused. He wriggled his eyes and made a gesture with 4-fingered hands. Billy Bob's translator told him that it was a shrug.
"We didn't get anything like that," he sputtered.
"We have a confirmation from your officer, Jas."
One step forward. "I'm Officer Jas."
Billy Bob could not believe his luck. "Is your first name Hugh? Are you Hugh Jas?" They stared at him as their translator struggled to differentiate his words. "What? Don't give me that. It's a simple question." He pointed at the licker. "Are you Hugh Jas? Tell me right now where I can find Hugh Jas."
The translator.
"Obstructing government operations, are you?"
No, I'm Jas, just not a Hugh Jas."
"Fine. Clear out of here, all of you. Your belongings will be returned when we're done with your ship. Off, off, off." He began to wave them out of the cargo bay, stomping behind them as they scurried away and out of the ship. The Archangels were laughing over the private comm, but none of their speakers were on, thankfully. Billy Bob corralled the lickers off the ship, and as they stood around, looking confused, the captain spoke up. "What's going to happen?" "We're going to take your ship for a solar cycle, and you'll get it back when we're done."
But what do we do until then?"
"First of all, what is your launch clearance?"
We left the data slate on the bridge."
"Excellent. All right now then." Billy Bob pointed to the biggest admin building at the center of the complex. "You need to go find Amanda in accounting."
"Amanda who?"
"Amanda Hugginkiss. You go in there and you demand Amanda Hugginkiss. You shout it if you need be. You do not leave until you finally find Amanda Hugginkiss. Then she'll give you a receipt. But now clear out. We're taking off." Billy Bob walked back inside, waving to the Sergeant White, who hit the button to start closing the cargo ramp. Once it was closed and they were left alone in the massive cargo bay, Billy Bob held out his hands. "Who's good? Who's good? Touchdown, touchdown dance! Woo!" He began to dance as the Archangels laughed and applauded his performance. All right, get out of my damn suit and get this pig in the air," Crunch finally said. "Come on, don't be a grump. This way is no one has to die. We're out of here and free and clear. Live it up, Captain."
"We're not out of here yet, Lieutenant," she growled.
All right. Billy Bob opened the hatch at the back of the suit. "A little help here." He tried to pull up and out of it, but he was still injured, so was groaning and struggling, but couldn't pull himself out. Cal stepped over, reaching in to help pull him out, much more gentle with her power suit than he was. He was held in her arms for a moment as he looked up at her. "Are you my mummy?" And she snorted before dropping him to the deck. He got his feet under him, but hit a little hard as he had to stumble forward and then slowly straighten up, managing to keep from falling flat on his face. "Cat-like reflexes. Do I not cease to amaze?" "We're all impressed with your ability to spew bullshit out of your mouth, Billy Bob," Cal said, as he had a shit-eating grin plastered on his face. Crunch had come out of the Longhorn to get back in her suit, while he headed deeper into the ship. Climbing up the small Xeno stairs 2 at a time, he still had to traverse several halls and corridors before making it to the bridge. He tapped into the ship's internal comm as he began to look over the systems. The engines were cold, but he wasn't sure how long it would take the lickers to realize that they had been hijacked. "Ivan, get into engineering. Get the engines warmed up. I'm going to get the other systems online. We need to kick the tires and light the fires, and get out of here, pronto." He found the command chair, shaking his head at how lazy they were about these systems. Navigation, steering, speed, communications, they were all handled by different people. One human could easily handle steering and speed, and likely navigation on their own. Hell, adding in communication wasn't that hard either. He had to drag a number of monitors over to the command chair, slaving them to its control as he sat down and started to type. Life support was obviously online, but he adjusted the atmosphere to be more human-friendly. Then he stopped as he thought of Emily and set it to standard. Ivan had the engine startup sequence going, and he quickly brought the other systems online, testing nav boosters, grav generators, and the inertia dampeners one by one to make sure that they were fully functional. He kept all of them running on his Longhorn, since fully shutting it down was more trouble than it was worth, since he could get unloaded and going in less than an hour. The engines were just starting to spin up when he got the call from the tower. He quickly picked up the data slate and turned the video feed off.
This is Tower, we've got indications of engine spin-up from your platform. We don't have you scheduled for takeoff for another soda cycle.
Yes, Tower, this is, he looked at the data slate, Atlas 894376-221.
No name? Did Xenos not name their ships?
Well, shit. Did Jazz not call you up? We have had a change of plans. We've got no longer waiting on cargo. We're prepping for an immediate takeoff.
Atlas 221, with the recent trouble, you're aware of the enhanced security protocols?
Yeah, Tower. I have my launch code right here. Foxtrot Echo Zulu 361.
Understood, Atlas. However, that was the launch code for tonight, not right now. We're supposed to have security sweep your ship before the new code can be given.
Oh, is that necessary? They swept us to give us this one, and that was earlier. Do you really think that some dangerous terrorists have snuck into a port and taken over a ship without any explosions or fighting?
There was a pause as Billy Bob held his breath. Yeah, that's pretty unlikely. They're supposed to be real savages, barbarians. I hope they fornicate in pools of blood.
That's disgusting.
Right. Yeah, you're okay to go, Atlas 221. No one is launching. I'll clear you with Central.
Appreciate it, Tower.
He let out a breath and smiled once more as he got the ship operational.
Then he brought up the internal PA. Someone come up here. I'm going to need you to tell me where I'm going.
It took a few minutes, but he was joined by Crunch on the bridge. We can't contact our cruiser until we're past orbit, otherwise they might pick it up.
Oh, sorry, I should have clarified. I have to watch these screens. I can steer from the nav comp, but I can't actually see outside to see if someone's in my way.
What, can't you get Ivanovich to steer?
I don't know. Ask him.
Ivanovich, can you steer this thing?
No, it's too big.
That's what she said, Billy Bob shouted over the PA.
Hey-o!
Fine, stay in engineering. She stepped forward on the bridge and looked out the viewports. What do you need to know?
Is there anything directly in front of us that we'll hit?
No, there's buildings.
Holy shit, buildings, we'll never escape. There was a pause as he read the screens around him. If you're glaring at me, I can't see it. Anyway, just sit down somewhere and don't crush anything. Finally, he activated the engines and disengaged the locks. The Atlas began to rise up out of the dock as he angled it up at a slow pace. The buildings are getting closer. Port or starboard?
Port. He shifted the ship a little and angled it up further, keeping it slow. Nothing but sky. He started to pick up speed. Clouds. The sky is getting darker. He checked the readings on his nav comp. Atlas 221, this is Central. You're not following the proper course. You need to angle down to reduce speed.
That's not what your wife said last night. Excuse me? All she kept shouting was harder, harder.
How dare you?
Eat shit, Central. I'm fecking pilot. I don't need your stupid computers to tell me what I'm doing. But hey, let your wife know that I had a great time last night with her and your sister.
Who is this? I'll report you. I'll have you brought up at charges.
Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. Like the cops are going to give you crap about me screwing around with your family. It's legal, buddy. Well, maybe not what your mother did. That was some nasty stuff.
I'll kill you. I'll hunt you down. You're dead, dead.
Billy Bob cut the feed with a smile. And now this flight won't be properly recorded and tracked because he'll have to explain that call. Now, why don't we get this fecking hog rolling? He punched it as Crunch started to make the call to the cruiser. To make it easier to find them, he began to broadcast a new designation, Rosie. Then across the ship's PA, the music rang out. Want to tell you a story about a woman I know. When it comes to loving, she steals the show. She ain't exactly pretty, ain't exactly small. 423956, you could say she's got it all. Billy Bob was banging his head as he flew, and then the chorus came on, and he yelled with the tune, "A whole lot of Rosie." And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, Jon Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.